process we go through in developing a balanced scorecard. I've got some guidelines here, but these are only guides. This is not an absolutist kind of process. I know of one institution where developing a similar kind of an initiative took many, many years, probably 6 or 7 years. The institution at which I worked at was able to accomplish this in a period of about 8 months. Hopefully, by learning from this process, you'll be able to get this accomplished in a few months rather than many years. Although, of course, we're never really completely done because this always can be improved. The first point that I want to start with is the people. Who should be involved with this? And I think of 3 primary actors. Now, in fact, there may be more people than just 3, but there are 3 partners. The first one is, of course, the project champion. This is usually someone who's very high in your organization. The president is an ideal person, somebody who will help you frame up this as an important initiative. This person's role is really crucial. He or she will help keep other projects from interfering with the development of the scorecard. It's so easy, of course, to get mired in many other kinds of details, and this person will help you keep on track with that particular thing. There's a certain magic to say, the president wants this, and that will help you clear the way for some of the work. It also is important that the project champion help mediate the differences among other parts of the organization as to what is important or what is key. This person also can help you break down organizational silos, and we all know that every organization has organizational silos. This person needs to work very closely with the content provider, who is the third partner in this initiative. Typically, the content provider is the Director of Institutional Research or another key person in the IR office. This is the person who's going to spend the most time on this project. This individual is really key. And the person doesn't have to know every bit of the content in detail. That will come later. But this person is really going to be the driving force in the initiative. The third partner, the technology support, is literally that. It is support. Don't let the techies drive the initiative or the project. It is a very important thing that you have a partnership with the technology people, but they should not be the primary. The content is absolutely critical in all of this. A next step, and probably the most difficult one, is the identification of key performance indicators, or KPIs. I strongly recommend that you keep it to 15 to 20, no more than that. If you get much beyond that, you're going to start to see that they are no longer key or critical. Whittling them from the many to the few is really crucial, and it's very difficult. I spent an entire day with one IR office where they had what they called key performance indicators, but there were 83 of them. Now, 83 is too many. I think anybody can look at that and say that they can't possibly be displayed on one sheet, and they can't possibly be really monitored effectively. By the end of the day, we had been able to aggregate all of these up and whittle them to 19, which is a manageable number. We never lost any of the detail. It was there, but the detail was put into a separate place so that we could look at it, and instead we could look at these overall indicators. How you develop these key performance indicators is by working with what I will call process stakeholders. These are the people who are actually working on the ground. They are the ones who are delivering the services, delivering instruction, overseeing those services or instruction. For example, maybe one of your KPIs has to do with referrals of students to the tutoring center. You've come up with a list of a draft of some of the KPIs that you think would be very good things to monitor, that are good indicators. And you've decided that referrals of students to the tutoring center is a KPI that you want to have. Now, you have to work with the process stakeholder, who is probably going to be the head of the tutoring center. But you might find that they don't have any way that they can monitor who was referred to the tutoring center. All they can keep track of is who actually came to the tutoring center and how much time they spent there. Aha! Maybe that's a better definition. You really do need to know how many people are coming into the tutoring center. Are they coming in early in the semester? Are they staying for a long time? Are they coming only at the end of the semester at the last minute in a panic mode? That kind of information can be quite useful for you. The long and short of it is, work with those who are responsible for delivering the services and improving student performance. They really need to understand and to be able to buy into the idea of what these indicators are. Working with them increases their understanding and their probable usage of these KPIs. A next step, and by the way, the previous step is the one that's going to take the longest. This is going to be a difficult step, and it is going to be one that will take quite a bit of diplomacy as well as your technical knowledge. But here's another step, this next one of setting targets or benchmarks, which we're also going to do in the form of signal values, is one that will also take a lot of diplomacy and tact in trying to do this. Now, your benchmarks can come from a variety of sources, things like comparisons with other institutions, with your institution's own past performance, or your preferences, your goals. Your goal is to grow or to diminish or to change something, so those may be some of the kinds of things. Let's return to the car dashboard example. The limitation of a car's dashboard is that the speed indicator only tells you how many miles per hour you're going. It doesn't tell you whether that's good or bad. If you're going 40 miles an hour, all you know is you're going 40 miles an hour. You need to have some kind of a target or context to be able to put that into some kind of a meaningful form. 40 miles an hour going down a freeway is very bad. It's way too slow. 40 miles an hour in a school zone is probably way too fast, but on a clear country road, that's probably a good speed. So you can set these kinds of parameters by comparing with other kinds of context situations. I also recommend that you not have a single target or level, but probably 3 makes some sense. That allows for what amounts to normal variation in a phenomenon, but it doesn't necessarily require that you change the target all the time or that you will panic if you see some of the variation. Any of you who are familiar with the classic term control limits will probably understand what I'm talking about, but obviously in an academic setting the word control doesn't work very well, so that's why we use the word signal values. Let's take a little further look at the concept of signal values. There are 3 levels, a best, middle, and worst, or caution. Caution level would be the middle, and the worst situation would be the one that would put you into the serious jeopardy zone. In some things, that when the number is higher, that's the better kind of situation, but then there are some other times when the number is lower, and that's what you want. Let's think about, for example, when you're playing golf. What is the preferred score? It's a lower score. Let's think about another situation when maybe you're going bowling. A higher score is the better score. And there is a certain amount of variation in your bowling ability or your golfing ability, so that little bit of variation that might occur can be something that with 3 levels you're going to be able to monitor that and not get too crazy if your score changes by just a little bit from one time to another. Likewise, college enrollment varies somewhat. When it rises or falls by a certain number of students, it's usually okay, and people shouldn't get too excited about it. But if it changes greatly in a direction that you would rather not have it go, then obviously you need to be able to monitor that and make some changes in it. Let me show you a specific example. In this particular example, we see an institution that expects its fall headcount enrollment to increase. You can see that with the blue arrow that's pointing up. Now, we plotted the actual values with the line that actually varies, and then we've shown the signal values with the best being green, the middle yellow, and worst being red. And you can see that at one point this institution's enrollment dipped below the worst level, but that now, in the most recent time, it's actually risen above the target or the green level, and so it's probably doing much better, and it is in fact starting to meet its goals. In this second example, we see where the desired performance level is to go to a lower level. In this case, the example is showing that they want to decrease the number of semesters that the average student spends in taking their developmental education courses. And here we again see the plot line, and we see that the signal value colors are reversed, where green is at the lower level because that's where they're trying to go, and red is at the upper level, and that's where they have been in a couple of cases. So you can see as this example goes how this works in establishing the 3 different levels. Basing the signal values, again, just like with the benchmarks, base them on your institution's past performance, your institution's goals, or on comparisons with other institutions. There are many, many ways to do comparisons. There are many sources, some of them that are directly from our Achieving the Dream initiative, and some of them from other sources. The SESI reports, the National Community College benchmark projects, the IPEDS data, and so on are also very, very good sources that you may want to look at. Continuing in our development process here, the last step, in fact one of the very, very end steps, is to design the display and delivery mechanism. You might want to be thinking about it as you go along, but I don't think you should be designing it initially because the content is what really should rule. However, there are some parameters, some things to keep in mind when you are designing the display. Number one is, put it on one screen or one page on your computer. Number two, avoid clutter. Provide detail using the hyperlinks. Don't make the detail right on the front sheet because it just provides clutter. And then as you go along, decide who's going to have access. How widely dispersed this is will make some difference in what kind of technology you choose and the way that you choose to display it. Some kinds of products are easily delivered to a wide array of people, while there are other products that are much more difficult to get out to a lot of people and they're harder for them to use. So you need to think about that in terms of who it is that's going to have access to this. Let me tell you another aspect of the process of display, and that is by using the hyperlinks. If we think about the KPI might be, for example, overall student satisfaction, but maybe the detail breaks it out into two subcomponents, student satisfaction on the one hand with their academic life and on the other hand with student services, but these have been combined into one indicator on the whole. But we want to see the detail to see if we have a greater problem in academics or a greater problem in student services and see which one it is that might be. So using this example, you can see the piece of the scorecard, and it's somewhat like you saw before, but with just one small piece of it. When we click on the hyperlink, the workbook view changes and you can see the detail, including a graph with table and trends over time, and be able to show more and more detail. Obviously there are a variety of ways to show this kind of detail, but I hope you'll get the idea. You'll even see that the actual figures are color-coded in accordance with what we saw on the balanced scorecard as a whole, so that you can see that these are, in fact, in the red zone. Continuing on in the development process, these are some factors that you will probably want to consider as you go along. I've listed them here, but they're really things that kind of go along on the way. You need to think about, with your project champion, how often he or she should monitor. What are the natural times when these kinds of things occur? Monthly is a really good idea, but perhaps the President's Council or some of the other groups meet only every 6 weeks or something like that. Either way, they need to think about how to monitor it and how frequently to monitor it. Now, why is this important? Well, part of it, even if the items themselves don't change, is that you'll start to see these people starting to realign their mental map to be able to see what these key performance indicators are and to therefore also realign some of their work within their parts of the college. There are also some issues that you need to be aware of as you go along that I'll call the fear factor. The fear factor might be from the Institutional Research Office itself. It's kind of hard for some of the IR people to stick their necks out about some of the kinds of things that we don't understand well or that we probably don't work with. And sometimes we become the bearer of bad tidings in some of these cases. You still need to work forward with this, and this is where your project champion can be so vital. If you have a good working relationship with that individual, he or she is going to be able to help say, yes, this is important. I have asked this IR person to help us with this process. The other fear factor can be with the people who are the process stakeholders, the folks that are actually working on delivering the services. Now this can go in a couple of different ways. One is that they might be afraid of showing their actual performance and being held accountable for it. Again, your project champion, the overall person, can help with this process and start to help people understand that we are going to be collectively accountable and that we are going to be working on these things together and that these are important factors and that it isn't something that we're going to play a blame game on. The The other fear factor, the other side of the fear factor for the process stakeholders is they might feel that if they're not included on the balanced scorecard, that perhaps they might not be considered important. And again, your project champion can help you with a lot of this kind of issue.